The key felt heavier than usual in Natalie's hand as she stood outside her own front door. 3 days early. She'd finished the Chicago conference ahead of schedule and decided to surprise Brandon. Maybe they could finally have that dinner they'd been postponing for weeks. Maybe they could reconnect. She turned the key and pushed the door open, rolling her suitcase into the foyer. The house smelled different. Not bad, just different. Vanilla and something else she couldn't place. A woman's perfume that wasn't hers. "Brandon?" she called out, setting her purse on the console table where she always left it. Footsteps padded down the stairs. Slow, heavy footsteps. Natalie looked up and froze. A woman stood on her staircase. A very pregnant woman wearing one of Natalie's robes, the cream silk one Brandon had given her for their anniversary. The woman's hand rested protectively on her swollen belly, and her face registered the same shock that must have been written across Natalie's own. "Who are you?" the woman asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. "How did you get in here?" Natalie's mouth opened but no sound came out. Her brain couldn't process what she was seeing. A pregnant stranger in her robe in her house, asking her how she got in. "I live here," Natalie finally managed, her voice sounding strange and distant to her own ears. "This is my house. Who are you?" The woman's eyes widened, then narrowed. Her hand moved to her belly again, a protective gesture. "Your house." "No, honey, you must be confused. This is my house. Mine and Brandon's." The name hit Natalie like a physical blow. "Brandon. Brandon is my husband," Natalie said slowly, each word feeling like broken glass in her mouth. The woman's face went pale. "That's impossible. Brandon is my husband. We've been married for 8 months. The world tilted sideways. Natalie grabbed the edge of the console table to steady herself. 8 months. 8 months while she'd been married to Brandon for 5 years. "I think you need to leave," the woman said, her voice rising. "Before I call the police." "Call them?" Natalie heard herself say. "Please call them. I'd love to hear you explain to the police why you're in my house. My name is on the deed. My name is on every bill. My furniture. My dishes. My life." The woman's confidence wavered. Her hand trembled against her belly. "Brandon," she called out, her voice cracking. "Brandon, you need to come home right now." Natalie pulled out her phone with shaking hands. She opened her camera and started recording. "State your name, please. And explain why you're in my home." "I'm Simone Jacobs," the woman started, then stopped. "Simone Harris. I'm Simone Harris. And I told you this is my home. Brandon and I bought it last year." "Last year?" Natalie repeated, her voice hollow. "I've lived here for 4 years. With my husband Brandon. Brandon Harris. Let me guess, same last name as yours." Simone's face answered before her mouth could. The front door burst open behind Natalie. She spun around to find Brandon standing in the doorway, his face drained of all color. He looked between Natalie and Simone, his mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. "Natalie," he breathed. "You're not supposed to be back until Friday." "Clearly," Natalie said, her voice ice. She kept her phone recording, capturing everything. "Surprise. Brandon, who is this woman?" Simone demanded, one hand braced against the wall as she descended another step. "She says she's your wife." "I can explain," Brandon said, holding up his hands like he was calming a wild animal. "Then explain," Natalie said. "Explain to your pregnant wife," she gestured at Simone, "why I have wedding photos all over this house. Explain why my name is on the mortgage. Explain why my clothes are in that closet upstairs. Explain, Brandon." "We're both listening." Brandon's eyes darted between them, calculating. Natalie could see his mind working, trying to find an angle, a story that would make this make sense. "Simone, baby, I can explain," he started, turning toward the pregnant woman. "She's my ex-wife. She's been having some mental health issues. I've been trying to help her, let her stay here sometimes when she's going through episodes." "Liar." Natalie's voice cracked like a whip through the foyer. She held up her phone. "I'm recording everything. Every word. So choose your next lie carefully." Simone grabbed the railing, her face crumpling. "You told me you were divorced. You said your ex-wife moved to California. You said." "Simone, please sit down," Brandon said, moving toward her. "The baby? Don't you dare use this baby as an excuse." Simone's voice broke. "Don't you dare pretend you care about this baby when you've been lying to me about everything." Natalie watched the scene unfold with a strange sense of detachment. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be her life. She was Natalie Foster Harris, successful business consultant, married to her college sweetheart, trying to start a family. This was someone else's nightmare. But it wasn't. The wedding ring on her finger, the one that matched the ring on Brandon's hand, was very real. The mortgage payment she'd made from her account just last week was real. The business trip she'd been on, building the consulting career she'd put her own dreams into while supporting Brandon's failed ventures, was real. All of it was real. Which meant this was real too. I want both of you out of my house, Natalie said quietly. The calm in her voice surprised even her. Now. Natalie, please, we need to talk about this like adults, Brandon pleaded. Adults don't commit bigamy, Natalie said. Adults don't lie to their wives. Adults don't bring their pregnant mistresses to live in their marital home. Get out. This is my home too, Brandon said, his voice taking on a hard edge. My name is on the deed. Then I'll leave, Natalie said. But this isn't over. Not even close. She grabbed her suitcase and purse, her hands surprisingly steady. As she walked toward the door, Simone's voice stopped her. Wait. The pregnant woman looked at Natalie with tears streaming down her face. How far along did he tell you I was when he said we were done? Natalie turned back slowly. He never mentioned you at all. Simone's sob echoed through the foyer. I'm 7 months pregnant. 7 months. He's known since the beginning. Natalie looked at Brandon, really looked at him, and for the first time in 5 years saw him clearly. Not the man she'd fallen in love with in college. Not the man she'd supported through 3 failed businesses. Not the man she'd been trying to build a life with. A stranger. A liar. A con artist who had fooled them both. You'll be hearing from my attorney, Natalie said to Brandon. Then to Simone, I'm sorry he did this to you too. She walked out of her own house, pulling her suitcase behind her, her phone still recording every moment. The afternoon sun felt too bright, too normal for a day when her entire world had shattered. Behind her, she could hear Brandon's voice, low and pleading, trying to convince Simone of something. More lies probably. More manipulation. But Natalie wasn't listening anymore. She was already planning. Already thinking. Already preparing for the war she was about to wage. Brandon had no idea what he'd just awakened. He'd always underestimated her, assumed her kindness was weakness, her love was blindness. He was about to learn how wrong he'd been. Natalie's best friend Rochelle opened her apartment door before Natalie could even knock. One look at Natalie's face and Rochelle pulled her inside. What happened? Rochelle demanded, taking the suitcase. You look like you've seen a ghost. Worse, Natalie said, her voice eerily calm. I saw my replacement. Very pregnant with my husband's baby. In my house. Wearing my robe. Rochelle's mouth fell open. What? The story poured out of Natalie in a rush. The conference ending early, the woman on the stairs, Brandon's pathetic attempts to explain. Rochelle listened, her expression cycling through shock, rage, and disbelief. That lying, scheming, Rochelle bit off a string of curses. How long has this been going on? She said they've been married for 8 months. She's 7 months pregnant. Natalie sank onto Rochelle's couch, the adrenaline finally wearing off. He's been living a complete double life. We need to call the police, Rochelle said, pacing. That's bigamy. That's fraud. That's... I recorded everything, Natalie interrupted, pulling out her phone. Every word. I want to be smart about this. Strategic. She opened her banking app, her fingers steady despite the trembling in her chest. Their joint account, the one she'd been depositing her consulting income into for years, showed a balance of $800. $800 when there should have been over $30,000. He's been draining our accounts, Natalie said quietly, showing Rochelle the screen. Look at these withdrawals. $5,000 here, $3,000 there, all over the past 6 months. Rochelle leaned over her shoulder, scrolling through the transactions. These are all to accounts I don't recognize. Natalie, he's been stealing from you. Stealing from us, Natalie corrected. From our future. From everything I've been working for. Her phone buzzed. A text from Brandon. Please come home so we can talk about this rationally. Simone left. It's just us. We can work this out. Natalie stared at the message. Just us. As if the pregnant woman was an inconvenient detail they could sweep aside. As if 5 years of lies could be erased with one conversation. She didn't respond. Another text. I love you. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. Don't throw away everything we built. Everything we built. Natalie almost laughed. She'd built her consulting business from nothing while working full-time to support his dreams. She'd built their savings. She'd built their home, making every mortgage payment on time while he invested in schemes that never panned out. What had Brandon built except a web of lies? I need a lawyer, Natalie said. The best divorce attorney in the city. I know someone, Rochelle said immediately. Diane Preston. She's ruthless and brilliant. Represented my cousin in her divorce. Took her husband to the cleaners when she found out about his offshore accounts. Call her. Tonight if possible. I want to move fast before Brandon can hide more assets. Rochelle grabbed her own phone, scrolling through contacts. While she made the call, Natalie opened her laptop and started documenting everything. Every transaction, every text message, every email that might provide evidence. Her consulting work had taught her to be meticulous, to build cases with facts and data. This was just another case to solve. Except this one was her life. An hour later, Rochelle had secured an emergency meeting with Diane Preston for first thing in the morning. Natalie spent the rest of the evening combing through financial records, her anger transforming into cold determination. Brandon called 6 times. She didn't answer. At midnight, Simone's number appeared on her phone. Natalie hesitated, then answered. Hello. This is Simone. The woman's voice was thick with tears. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to talk to someone who understands. Who knows what he's really like. Natalie closed her eyes. She could hang up. She could cut this woman out of her life entirely. But something in Simone's voice, the same devastation Natalie felt in her own chest, made her pause. I'm listening, Natalie said carefully. He told me you were crazy, Simone said. He showed me divorce papers. He said you were harassing him, that you couldn't let go. I believed him. God, I believed everything. How did you meet? At a gym. 10 months ago. He said he was a successful investment consultant. Took me to nice restaurants, bought me gifts. He was charming and attentive and I fell for it. Simone's voice cracked. When I got pregnant, he seemed so happy. He said we should get married right away, make it official before the baby came. Let me guess, Natalie said. Quick courthouse wedding? In Las Vegas. He said it would be romantic. Just the two of us. Now I know why he didn't want a real wedding with family and friends. Because it wasn't legal. Because he was already married. He's been stealing money from me too, Simone continued. I gave him my savings to invest. $20,000. He said he'd triple it. Now I can't reach the investment company. I don't think it was ever real. Natalie's stomach dropped. How many other women do you think there are? The silence on the other end of the line was answer enough. I left your house tonight, Simone said finally. I'm staying with my sister. I can't be there. Not after finding out the truth. But I have nowhere else to go long term. No money. A baby coming in 2 months. He took everything. Did he ever physically hurt you? Natalie asked. No. Just lies. Just emotional manipulation. Making me doubt myself. Isolating me from my friends and family by saying they didn't understand our love. Classic abuser tactics. Financial abuse, isolation, gaslighting. Natalie recognized them all now, seeing them clearly without the fog of love obscuring her vision. I'm meeting with a divorce attorney tomorrow, Natalie said. I'll ask about your situation too. What he did to you might be prosecutable as fraud. I don't want to cause you more trouble, Simone said quietly. I know I'm the other woman. I know you must hate me. I don't hate you, Natalie said, surprising herself with the truth. You're a victim too. He lied to both of us. He used both of us. The enemy here is Brandon, not each other. But that didn't mean they were friends. That didn't mean Natalie could trust her. Brandon had orchestrated this entire situation, and Natalie didn't know what role Simone really played in it all. Thank you for listening, Simone said. I should let you go. After they hung up, Natalie sat in the darkness of Rochelle's guest room, her mind racing. 20,000 from Simone. 30,000 from their joint accounts. Who knew how much more from credit cards or loans in her name? Brandon wasn't just a cheater. He was a con artist. A criminal. And Natalie was going to make sure everyone knew it. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Brandon. I know you're angry, but please don't do anything rash. Think about our history. Think about what we mean to each other. Come home and we'll figure this out together. Natalie typed a response. I'm thinking about our history. About every lie you told. Every time you said you loved me while stealing from me. Every moment you were with her while I was working to support us. I'm thinking very clearly now. My attorney will be in touch. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. His response came immediately. You're making a huge mistake. Don't make me do this the hard way. There it was. The threat. The real Brandon emerging from behind the mask of the charming, struggling entrepreneur she'd been supporting for years. Natalie screenshot the message and added it to her evidence folder. Let him try to do it the hard way. She was ready for war. Diane Preston's office occupied the top floor of a sleek downtown building. Natalie arrived 15 minutes early, her laptop bag heavy with documents and evidence. She'd barely slept, spending most of the night organizing bank statements, credit card bills, and screenshots of Brandon's increasingly threatening texts. The attorney was exactly what Rochelle had promised, sharp-eyed, no-nonsense, and intimidating in a way that made Natalie grateful they were on the same side. Diane listened to the entire story without interruption, her expression giving nothing away. Let me make sure I understand, Diane said when Natalie finished. Your husband committed bigamy, drained your joint accounts, possibly opened credit lines in your name, and is now threatening you when you won't come home and pretend this didn't happen. That's the summary, Natalie confirmed. And the second woman, Simone, says he defrauded her of $20,000 through a fake investment scheme? Yes. She has text messages and bank transfers to prove it. Diane leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. This is actually better than I initially thought. Your husband didn't just commit a family law violation. He committed multiple felonies. We're not just talking divorce here. We're talking criminal prosecution. The words settled over Natalie like armor. What do I need to do? First, we file for divorce immediately. Then we freeze all joint accounts and credit lines to prevent further theft. I'll need you to pull your credit report today, all 3 bureaus, to see if he's opened accounts in your name without your knowledge. Natalie pulled out her phone and started making notes. Second, Diane continued, we contact the police and file a fraud complaint. Bring all your evidence. The bigamy is actually harder to prosecute unless Simone files charges, but the financial crimes are clear-cut. What if he's done this to other women? Then they're victims too, and their testimony will strengthen the case. Diane pulled out a business card. This is a private investigator I work with. Former FBI. He's expensive but worth every penny. He'll dig into your husband's background, find other victims, track down hidden assets. You'd be surprised how many men like Brandon have offshore accounts or property in relatives' names. Natalie took the card. Mitchell Chin, Private Investigations. The cost listed at the bottom made her wince, but she had her consulting income. She'd been supporting Brandon for years. It was time to invest in herself. Do it, she said. Good. Third, we need to secure your business. You said you're a consultant? Yes. I work with mid-size companies on efficiency and restructuring. I have a few long-term contracts right now. Is Brandon listed on any business documents? Does he have access to your business accounts? Natalie's blood ran cold. He helped me set up the LLC 3 years ago. I don't remember all the details. We need to check that immediately. If he has any signing authority, he could drain those accounts too or claim ownership of your business in the divorce. By the time Natalie left Diane's office 2 hours later, she had a plan. File for divorce by end of day. Freeze accounts. Pull credit reports. Hire the investigator. Review all business documents. Change all passwords. Document every interaction with Brandon. The elevator ride down felt different than the ride up. Natalie was no longer a victim in shock. She was a woman taking control of her life. Her phone rang as she reached the parking garage. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Natalie Harris? A male voice asked. Speaking. This is Detective Raymond Porter with the Fraud Division. Your attorney Diane Preston contacted us about some irregularities you've discovered. I'd like to meet with you today if possible. Diane worked fast. Yes, of course. When and where? Our office downtown, 2 o'clock? Bring all documentation you have. At the police station, Detective Porter turned out to be a tired-looking man in his 50s with kind eyes and a methodical approach. He listened to Natalie's story, examined her evidence, and asked pointed questions about Brandon's business activities. Has your husband ever mentioned investment opportunities to you? Porter asked. Particularly ones that seemed too good to be true? He's always had schemes, Natalie admitted. Get-rich-quick ideas that never panned out. I thought he was just bad at business. But he never asked me to invest beyond what I was already providing to keep us afloat. That's because you were the meal ticket, Porter said bluntly. He needed you stable and working. It's the other women he approached for direct investment scams. Other women? Natalie repeated. You think there are more besides Simone? I'd bet my pension on it. Porter pulled out a file. We've actually been watching your husband for 3 months. Anonymous tip came in about fraud. We've been building a case but couldn't find his victims. They were either too embarrassed to come forward or didn't realize they'd been scammed. Natalie felt the room spin. 3 months. We couldn't contact you directly without tipping him off. But now that you've come to us. Porter spread his hands. You're the break we needed. The legal wife with documentation. You can open doors we couldn't. What do you need from me? Everything you have. And I'd like to wire you up for your next conversation with him. Wire me up? Natalie's voice rose. Like record him? With your consent, which makes it legal in this state. If he's smart, he'll lawyer up and stop talking. But if he's arrogant, and most con men are, he might say something incriminating. 2 hours later, Natalie walked out of the police station with copies of fraud complaints, restraining order paperwork, and a plan to record any future interactions with Brandon. Her phone had 17 missed calls and 23 text messages from him, each one more desperate than the last. Where are you? We need to talk. Don't do this to us. You're overreacting. I can explain everything if you just listen. Fine, be that way. But you'll regret this. I'm sorry. Please come home. This is ridiculous. I'm your husband. Natalie forwarded them all to Diane and Detective Porter. Evidence. Everything was evidence now. She drove to Rochelle's apartment through the late afternoon traffic, her mind processing everything she'd learned. Brandon had been under investigation for months. He'd scammed multiple women. He'd built their entire life on lies and stolen money. How had she not seen it? How had she been so blind? But she knew the answer. She'd loved him. She'd believed in him. She'd wanted to see the best in him because admitting the truth meant admitting she'd wasted 5 years of her life on a fantasy. Well, no more fantasy. Reality was harsh and clear and painful. But at least it was real. Her phone rang. Simone's number. Hello. He came to my sister's house, Simone said, her voice shaking. Banging on the door, demanding to talk to me. My sister's husband had to threaten to call the police before he left. Did you call them? No. I was scared. What if he comes back? Call Detective Raymond Porter, Natalie said, giving her the number. Tell him everything. He's building a fraud case against Brandon. You're a victim too. I don't want to cause trouble. Simone, listen to me. Brandon has scammed multiple women. Not just us. This is what he does. We're not the first and we won't be the last unless someone stops him. If you're worried about money, about the baby, the best thing you can do is help put him in prison where he can't hurt anyone else. Silence. Then, you really think he's done this before? I know he has. The police told me today. They've been investigating him for months. Oh my God. Simone's voice broke. I thought I was so stupid. I thought I was the only one dumb enough to fall for his lies. You're not stupid. He's a professional liar. That's his actual skill. Not business, not investments. Manipulation and fraud. Natalie pulled into Rochelle's parking lot. Call the detective. File a complaint. Protect yourself and your baby. After they hung up, Natalie sat in the car watching the sun set over the city. Somewhere out there, Brandon was probably panicking, realizing his perfect setup was falling apart. Good. Let him panic. Let him feel a fraction of the fear and devastation he'd caused. Her phone buzzed. Mitchell Chin, the private investigator. Mrs. Harris, I've begun preliminary research. Can we meet tomorrow to discuss findings? I think you'll want to hear this in person. Natalie typed back. 9 a.m. works. Your office? See you then. She gathered her things and headed into Rochelle's building. Tomorrow would bring more revelations, more pain, more evidence of Brandon's betrayal. But it would also bring more ammunition for the war she was waging. And Natalie was determined to win. Mitchell Chen's office was nothing like Diane Preston's polished corporate space. Located in a converted warehouse, it felt more like a command center. Multiple computer screens, filing cabinets, and a wall covered in photos and notes connected by red string like something out of a crime show. Coffee? Mitchell offered, gesturing to a pot that looked like it had been brewing since yesterday. No, thank you. Natalie sat in the chair across from his desk, her stomach already in knots. You said you found something? Mitchell opened a thick folder. I found a lot of things. Your husband is much busier than you thought. He pulled out the first document. Let's start with the easy stuff. Brandon Harris, currently married to you for 5 years, fake married to Simone Jacobs for 8 months. But did you know he was engaged to a woman named Patricia Monroe 2 years ago? Natalie's breath caught. What? They never made it to the wedding. She broke it off when she discovered he'd stolen $35,000 from her retirement account. She didn't press charges because he convinced her it was an investment opportunity that went bad. Classic con artist move, Make the victim feel complicit. Mitchell pulled out more documents. Before Patricia, there was Grace Williams. Before Grace, there was Tanya Rodriguez. I've found 6 women so far who had relationships with Brandon over the past 7 years. All of them lost money. All of them were emotionally and financially manipulated. None of them pressed charges. 6 women, Natalie whispered. While he was married to me? Some overlapping with your marriage, some before. But here's where it gets interesting. Mitchell pulled out another set of papers. Your husband doesn't just scam women he's romantically involved with. He runs investment scams too. Fake cryptocurrency ventures. Ponzi schemes disguised as tech startups. He targets people at gyms, coffee shops, networking events. Small amounts, 5,000 here, 10,000 there, from people who can't afford to lose it but are too embarrassed to report it. The room felt too small, too hot. Natalie forced herself to breathe. How much total? That I've confirmed? $375,000 over 7 years. But I suspect it's more. Some people won't talk to a PI. Some probably don't even know they were scammed yet. $375,000. Natalie thought about her own drained accounts, Simone's lost savings, all the other women Mitchell had found. There's more, Mitchell continued. He's been opening credit cards and taking out personal loans using information from the women he dates. Patricia had 3 cards she didn't know about until collections agencies started calling. Tanya found out he'd taken a $15,000 loan in her name. Did he do that to me? Natalie pulled out her phone with shaking hands. I pulled my credit report yesterday like my attorney told me to, but I haven't looked at it yet. Look now, Mitchell said gently. I'll help you interpret what you find. Natalie opened the credit report on her phone, scrolling through lines of information. Her credit score had dropped 70 points in the last 6 months. What? There, 3 credit cards she'd never opened. A personal loan from an online lender. A department store card maxed out at $5,000. He used my information, Natalie said, her voice hollow. How much? Mitchell did quick math on his calculator. Looks like $28,000 in fraudulent debt. Plus whatever he's withdrawn from your joint accounts. Natalie set her phone down before she threw it across the room. Can I prove it was him? Absolutely. The IP addresses for the applications trace back to your home address. The purchases on the cards are at places he frequents. We can prove fraud. The question is, do you want to press charges? Yes, Natalie said immediately. For everything. I want him prosecuted for every single crime. Good. Because it gets worse. Mitchell pulled out bank statements. I've been tracking his financial activity. He has 3 bank accounts you don't know about. One in his name, one in his mother's name that he has access to, and one under a business name, Harris Investment Solutions. His mother knows about this? Either she's complicit or he forged her signature. I haven't been able to confirm yet. What's in the accounts? The personal account has about $12,000. His mother's has $47,000. The business account has $83,000. Natalie did the math. That's over $140,000 hidden from me. Marital assets if you can prove he accumulated it during your marriage. Which I can. And here's the most interesting part. Mitchell pulled out property records. He owns a condo downtown. Bought it 4 years ago with a cash down payment of $50,000. With my money, Natalie said. That I earned. That I thought was going into our savings. Exactly. The condo is in his name only, but if the money came from marital assets, which it did, you're entitled to half its value in the divorce. Natalie stared at the property listing. A luxury condo with river views. 2 bedrooms, 2 baths. Hardwood floors and granite counters. Everything they talked about buying together someday when they could afford it. He could afford it. For years ago. While telling her they needed to be careful with money. While she worked 60-hour weeks and put her own dreams on hold. Who lives there? Natalie asked. Right now? No one. He's been using it as a rental property through an Airbnb-type service. Making about $3,000 a month in rental income that he never reported to you. $3,000 a month for 4 years. Natalie calculated quickly. Over $140,000 in rental income, all hidden from her. I have more, Mitchell said. But I want to make sure you're okay. This is a lot to process. I'm fine, Natalie lied. Show me everything. Mitchell hesitated, then pulled out the final folder. I found evidence of 2 additional women he's currently scamming. One is a woman named Rachel Simmons. Met her at a business networking event 3 months ago. He told her he's a divorced business consultant looking to expand his portfolio. She's invested $12,000 so far in a fake tech startup. 3 months ago, Natalie said. While Simone was living in our house. While he was still married to me. Yes. And there's another woman, Jennifer Park, who he's been seeing for 6 weeks. She hasn't invested money yet, but the pattern is familiar. Expensive dates, grand promises, sob stories about his difficult divorce. Natalie closed her eyes. Of course there were more. Brandon didn't just have double lives. He had multiple lives, all running simultaneously, all carefully compartmentalized. These women need to know, Natalie said. They need to be warned before he takes more from them. Detective Porter can contact them as part of the investigation. Or I can if you prefer. But once we approach them, Brandon will know we're onto him. He'll lawyer up and probably stop all communication. I don't care, Natalie said. No more women get hurt if I can prevent it. Mitchell nodded approvingly. I'll provide all this information to your attorney and the detective. You have a strong case for divorce and criminal prosecution. Your husband is going down, Mrs. Harris. It's just a matter of time. Natalie gathered all the documents, her hands steady despite the earthquake in her chest. 5 years. She'd spent 5 years married to a stranger. A criminal. A man who stole from her while she loved him. How could she have been so wrong about someone? Her phone buzzed. A text from Brandon. I know you're meeting with people, spreading lies about me. This is going to come back to hurt you. I have resources you don't know about. Friends who can make your life very difficult. Natalie showed the message to Mitchell. Threats, he said, taking a photo of the screen. Add it to the evidence file. Keep screenshots of everything he sends. He's scared, Natalie realized. He knows I'm closing in. Scared animals are dangerous animals, Mitchell warned. Don't be alone with him. Don't go to the house by yourself. If he tries to contact you in person, call the police immediately. As if on cue, Natalie's phone rang. Brandon's number. She let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes later, another call. Then another. He's panicking, Mitchell observed. The voicemail started rolling in. Natalie put her phone on speaker so Mitchell could hear. Natalie, please pick up. We need to talk about this rationally. You're making a huge mistake. I can explain everything if you just listen. Fine, don't answer. But you need to know that I've been protecting you from things. Things you don't understand. If you keep pushing this, you're going to regret it. I love you. I know I messed up, but we can work through this. Don't throw away 5 years over one mistake. One mistake. As if multiple women, hundreds of thousands, and fraud years of lies were one mistake. Save all of those, Mitchell instructed. Every voicemail is evidence. The progression from pleading to threatening to love bombing shows his manipulative pattern. Natalie's phone buzzed again. This time, an email from an unknown address. She opened it cautiously. You think you're so smart hiring lawyers and investigators? But you don't know everything. You don't know what I'm capable of. Drop this now or you'll find out. That's escalating, Mitchell said, his voice sharp. Forward that to me, your attorney, and Detective Porter immediately. Then we're going to the courthouse to file for a restraining order. 2 hours later, Natalie sat in a courthouse filing room with Diane Preston, filling out forms for a protective order. The judge granted it immediately based on Brandon's threatening communications. Brandon had 24 hours to vacate the marital home and was prohibited from contacting Natalie directly. He'll violate it, Diane warned. Men like this always do. Keep your phone with you at all times. If he shows up anywhere near you, call 911 immediately. Natalie drove to Rochelle's apartment with a police escort, just in case Brandon was watching her movements. Everything felt surreal. A week ago she'd been happily married, planning a surprise homecoming. Now she had a restraining order against her husband and evidence of crimes that could send him to prison for years. Inside Rochelle's apartment, Natalie collapsed on the couch. Her phone rang immediately. Simone. I talked to Detective Porter, Simone said. I filed a complaint. He said there are other women. That Brandon's done this before. I know, Natalie said. My investigator found 6 others. Maybe more. 6, Simone breathed. How is that possible? How did he manage so many lies? Practice, Natalie said bitterly. Years and years of practice. Detective Porter wants me to testify if this goes to trial. I said yes. I want him to pay for what he did. Natalie closed her eyes, feeling a strange kinship with this woman she'd never wanted in her life. They weren't friends. They probably never would be. But they were both victims of the same predator. Thank you, Natalie said, for being brave enough to tell the truth. After they hung up, Natalie opened her laptop. Time to salvage what she could of her business. She spent the next 3 hours securing accounts, changing passwords, reviewing her LLC paperwork. Brandon wasn't listed on anything important, thank God. Her business was safe. Small victory, but she'd take it. Her email pinged. Mitchell Chin. Just got confirmation that Jennifer Park and Rachel Simmons have been contacted by Detective Porter. Both women are cooperating with the investigation. Rachel is filing fraud charges. Jennifer is grateful we reached her before she invested any money. That's 2 more victims willing to testify. The net was closing around Brandon. Slowly but surely his house of cards was collapsing. Natalie's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Natalie Harris? A woman's voice asked. Yes. My name is Patricia Monroe. Mitchell Chin gave me your number. He said Brandon did to you what he did to me. The woman from 2 years ago. The broken engagement. Yes, Natalie said. And 5 other women that we know of. I should have pressed charges, Patricia said, her voice thick with regret. If I had, maybe he wouldn't have hurt all of you. It's not your fault, Natalie said firmly. He's a professional con artist. He made you feel like it was your fault, like you were complicit. That's what he does. But it's not your fault. It's his. Detective Porter called me today. Asked if I'd be willing to testify. Are you? A long pause. Then, yes. I want to stop him from doing this to anyone else. After Patricia hung up, Natalie sat in the quiet apartment, surrounded by evidence of Brandon's crimes. 7 women willing to testify. Financial records proving fraud. Threatening messages showing his true character. Brandon had built an empire of lies. But empires fall. And Natalie was going to make sure his fell hard. The coffee shop Simone had chosen was neutral territory, a bright, busy place where neither of them had history with Brandon. Natalie arrived first, ordering a green tea she didn't really want, more for something to do with her hands than actual thirst. When Simone walked in, Natalie recognized her immediately despite seeing her only once before in that devastating moment at the house. Simone looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, one hand resting protectively on her belly. She was younger than Natalie had realized, mid-20s maybe. Just a kid really. Thank you for meeting me, Simone said, sliding into the booth across from Natalie. I know this must be weird. Everything about this situation is weird, Natalie said. But I think we need to talk. Face to face. Not as enemies. Simone nodded, ordering a decaf coffee from the waitress. Once they were alone again, she pulled out her phone. I brought everything I have. Text messages, emails, bank transfers. Detective Porter already has copies, but I thought you should see it too. Natalie scrolled through the evidence Simone shared. The messages were sickeningly familiar. The same sweet words, the same promises, the same manipulation she'd seen in messages to the other victims Mitchell had found. He told me you were mentally unstable, Simone said quietly. That you'd been stalking him since the divorce. He showed me a restraining order he said you'd violated. There was no divorce, Natalie said. No restraining order. All fabricated. Probably doctored documents. I know that now. Simone wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. I've been thinking about all the times things didn't add up. He'd disappear for days claiming business trips. He never wanted me to meet his friends or family. I couldn't call him at certain times. He paid for everything in cash. I thought he was just private. Now I know he was hiding me from you and hiding you from me. Did he ask you for money right away? No. That's the thing, at first he seemed successful. Nice car, expensive clothes, always had cash. It wasn't until I got pregnant that he started talking about investment opportunities. Said we needed to think about the baby's future. I trusted him. I gave him everything I had saved. Natalie pulled up her own evidence on her laptop. Look at these dates. The times he was supposedly on business trips? He was actually meeting other women. This woman, Rachel, invested $12,000 in a fake tech startup. And Jennifer, he was setting her up when everything fell apart. Simone studied the timeline, her face growing paler. I was so stupid. All the signs were there. You weren't stupid, Natalie said firmly. He's had years to perfect his techniques. Mitchell Chin, my investigator, says Brandon shows classic narcissistic con artist behavior. He studies people, figures out what they need emotionally, then becomes exactly that person. You needed stability and support during your pregnancy. I needed a partner who believed in building something together. We both gave him what he needed and he took everything he could get. How many women has he done this to? 7 that we've confirmed. Maybe more who haven't come forward yet. Simone's hands shook as she set down her coffee. I need to ask you something. The baby, do you think he actually wanted it? Or was that part of the con too? Natalie considered the question carefully. I think he wanted you vulnerable and dependent on him. Pregnancy accomplishes that. But he probably also planned to use the baby as leverage, to manipulate you to access child support payments, maybe even to scam other people with sob stories about being a struggling single father. That's so cold. That's who he really is. Everything else is an act. Simone pulled out a thick envelope. I found these in a box he left at my sister's place. Financial documents. More bank statements from accounts I didn't know about. Records of meetings with people I never heard him mention. I think there's more going on than even the police know about. Natalie paged through the documents. Transfers to offshore accounts. Business names she didn't recognize. Meeting notes about investors and opportunities. We need to give these to Detective Porter immediately, Natalie said. I know, but I wanted you to see them first. Because. Simone took a deep breath. Because I need to know something. Do you blame me? For what happened? Even though I didn't know about you? Natalie met her eyes. I did at first. For about 5 minutes when I saw you in my house. But then I realized you're just another victim in his game. You didn't seduce my husband away from me. He targeted you, lied to you, used you. Just like he did to me and all the others. I feel so stupid, Simone whispered. I'm about to have a baby and the father is a criminal. What am I supposed to tell my child someday? The truth. That their father was a bad person who hurt a lot of people, but that you were strong enough to escape and build a good life anyway. Natalie paused. Have you thought about the baby? About what happens after? I can't raise a child alone with no money. My sister says I can stay with her for a while, but she has 3 kids already. I'm looking into government assistance, women's shelters. Detective Porter mentioned victim compensation programs. An idea formed in Natalie's mind. A crazy, complicated idea that made sense in a twisted way. What if we worked together? Natalie said. Simone looked up, confused. What do you mean? Not as friends. Not as family. But as allies. Brandon took from both of us. What if we team up to take it all back? I'm fighting for my share in the divorce. You're filing fraud charges. But what if we coordinate? Share information? Present a united front? Con artists hate when their victims talk to each other. It destroys their carefully constructed narratives. You do that? Help me? I do it to destroy him, Natalie corrected. But yes, helping you hurts him, so why not? Simone was quiet for a long moment. Okay, I'm in. What do we do? They spent the next 2 hours comparing notes, building a comprehensive timeline of Brandon's activities. Simone had information from his time living with her that Natalie didn't have. Natalie had access to financial records and legal resources Simone couldn't afford. Together, they painted a fuller picture of Brandon's criminal enterprise than either could have alone. He met with someone named Marcus Vaughn regularly, Simone said, pointing to several calendar entries. Always at weird times, early morning or late night. He said Marcus was a business partner, but when I asked questions, Brandon got defensive. Natalie wrote down the name. I'll have Mitchell look into him. Could be another victim or could be an accomplice. Her phone rang. Diane Preston. We have a court date, the attorney said. Preliminary divorce hearing in 3 weeks. And I just got word that Brandon hired a lawyer. Someone named Joel Christensen. Is he good? Unfortunately, yes. Expensive and aggressive. He'll try to drag this out and bleed you dry in legal fees. Then we hit fast and hard, Natalie said. I have new evidence. Simone found documents that show offshore accounts and possible money laundering. Can we use that? Absolutely. Get everything to me by tomorrow. I'll file amended paperwork including criminal fraud allegations. That should get the judge's attention. After Diane hung up, Natalie shared the update with Simone. He has money for an expensive lawyer but couldn't help me with rent, Simone said bitterly. Classic. All the more reason to make sure the court knows about every hidden asset. You're entitled to child support. I'm entitled to half of everything we built, or in this case, half of everything he stole while claiming to build it with me. They exchanged contact information and made plans to meet again in a few days. As Simone stood to leave, she hesitated. Thank you, she said. For not hating me. For seeing me as a person and not just the pregnant mistress. Thank you for being brave enough to tell the truth, Natalie replied. A lot of women in your position would have run away and tried to forget this ever happened. I thought about it, Simone admitted. But then I thought about this baby. About raising a child who might grow up to be like Brandon if I don't do something now. I want my child to know that actions have consequences. That lying and stealing and hurting people isn't acceptable. Even if it means their father goes to prison. After Simone left, Natalie sat alone in the coffee shop, processing everything. She just formed an alliance with the woman her husband had been living with while lying to her. If someone had told her a week ago this would happen, she would have laughed. But here she was. Life was stranger than fiction. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You think you're winning but you're not. I know things about you that would ruin you. Drop this now. Brandon using a new number to violate the restraining order. Natalie screenshot the message and forwarded it to Detective Porter and Diane Preston. Then she blocked the number. Let him threaten. Let him rage. Every message was more evidence. Every violation of the restraining order was another charge. Brandon was used to controlling the narrative, to manipulating the story. But this time, his victims were writing their own ending. And it wasn't going to be a happy one for him. The courthouse was colder than Natalie expected. Or maybe that was just the ice in her veins as she watched Brandon walk in with his attorney. He looked good, expensive suit, fresh haircut, confident smile. Playing the successful businessman wrongly accused. She wanted to laugh. Or scream. Or both. Don't react to him, Diane whispered. That's what he wants. Stay calm, stay professional. Brandon's eyes found hers across the hallway. He had the audacity to look hurt, like she was the one who'd betrayed him. She held his gaze without flinching until he looked away first. Small victory. The preliminary hearing was supposed to be routine, establishing temporary orders for assets, residences, and contact restrictions. But Joel Christensen, Brandon's attorney, came out swinging. Your Honor, my client is the victim of a vindictive spouse who is using false allegations to extract an unfair settlement, Christensen argued. These claims of fraud and bigamy are unsubstantiated and designed solely to damage Mr. Harris's reputation and business prospects. Diane stood, her voice calm and cutting. Your Honor, we have extensive documentation of Mr. Harris's criminal activities. Bank records showing theft from joint accounts. Credit reports showing fraudulent accounts opened in Mrs. Harris's name. Testimony from multiple women he defrauded. And evidence of an invalid marriage to another woman while still legally married to my client. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, looked between them. I've reviewed the preliminary filings. Mrs. Preston, you've included criminal allegations. Has Mr. Harris been charged? The district attorney is currently reviewing the case, Your Honor. Fraud charges are pending. My client filed police reports and has cooperated fully with the investigation. Mr. Christensen, does your client deny opening credit accounts in Mrs. Harris's name? Christensen shifted. My client maintains that all accounts were opened with Mrs. Harris's knowledge and consent for legitimate household expenses. Then he won't mind providing documentation showing her consent, Diane said smoothly. Signed applications, authorization forms, anything proving she agreed to these accounts. Silence. I thought not, Diane continued. Additionally, Your Honor, we have evidence that Mr. Harris has been threatening my client via text, email, and phone calls despite a protective order. He's used multiple phone numbers to circumvent blocking. We're requesting the court hold him in contempt. The judge turned to Brandon. Mr. Harris, have you contacted your wife since the protective order was issued? Brandon stood, putting on his most sincere expression. Your Honor, I only wanted to explain my side of things. My wife is operating under some misunderstandings and I thought if we could just talk. That's a yes, the judge interrupted. Mr. Harris, do you understand what a protective order means? Yes, but it means no contact. Not through phone, not through email, not through third parties, not through carrier pigeon. Is that clear? Your Honor, with all due respect. Is that clear, Mr. Harris? Brandon's jaw tightened. Yes, Your Honor. Good. You're in contempt. $500 fine, payable immediately. One more violation and you'll spend a night in jail. Do we understand each other? Yes, Your Honor. The judge turned back to the attorneys. I'm granting Mrs. Harris full use of the marital home. Mr. Harris will remove his personal belongings under police supervision and find alternate housing. All joint accounts are frozen pending resolution of the fraud allegations. Mrs. Harris's business accounts and assets remain under her sole control. Mr. Harris is prohibited from making any large purchases or transferring assets until this is resolved. Christensen tried to object but the judge shut him down. Your client should be grateful I'm not ordering him held without bail given the flight risk these offshore accounts present. Next hearing is in 6 weeks. We'll address permanent asset division then. Mrs. Preston, coordinate with the DA's office. If criminal charges are filed, this divorce will be stayed until after the criminal trial. 6 weeks. 42 days until the next battle. Natalie felt Diane's hand on her arm, guiding her out of the courtroom. Brandon tried to approach them in the hallway but Christensen pulled him back, whispering urgently. That went well, Diane said once they were outside. The judge clearly sees through his act. And her order about the offshore accounts? That's going to make it much harder for him to hide assets. What happens now? Now we wait for the DA to decide about criminal charges. In the meantime, I'll work with Mitchell to track down every penny Brandon stole. We'll build an asset list for the next hearing that includes the hidden accounts, the condo, rental income, everything. By the time we're done, Brandon won't be able to hide $1. Natalie's phone buzzed. Detective Porter. DA has agreed to move forward with fraud charges. Grand jury next week. Multiple victims' testimony. This is happening. Criminal charges are moving forward, Natalie said, showing Diane the text. Excellent. That strengthens our divorce case significantly. Once he's criminally convicted, you can use that conviction in family court to prove financial misconduct. They walked to the parking garage together, Diane briefing Natalie on next steps. As they reached Natalie's car, a figure stepped out from behind a pillar. Brandon. Natalie, please, he said, his voice desperate. Just give me 5 minutes. Let me explain. Stay away from her, Diane ordered, stepping between them. You're in violation of the protective order right now. I just need to talk to my wife. Ex-wife, Natalie corrected coldly. And I have nothing to say to you. You're ruining my life. You ruined your own life, Natalie said. Every choice, every lie, every woman you scammed, that was you. Own it. I made mistakes, okay? I admit that. But this doesn't have to be so ugly. We can work something out. Split things fairly. Move on. Fairly? Natalie laughed, a harsh sound. You want fair? Fair would be you going to prison for every crime you committed. Fair would be every woman you hurt getting their money back. Fair would be you experiencing a fraction of the pain and humiliation you've caused. I never meant to hurt you. You never meant to get caught, Natalie interrupted. There's a difference. Diane pulled out her phone. I'm calling the police. You've now violated the protective order twice in one day. The judge warned you what would happen. Brandon's face twisted. For a moment, Natalie saw real anger flash across his features before he schooled them back into pleading innocence. You'll regret this, he said quietly. Both of you. Is that a threat? Diane asked, her phone still recording. Brandon seemed to realize his mistake. He turned and walked away quickly, disappearing into the parking garage. He's cracking, Diane observed. Good. Scared men make mistakes. Natalie's hands were shaking as she unlocked her car. The confrontation had been brief but intense, a reminder that Brandon was still dangerous when cornered. Are you okay to drive? Diane asked. I'm fine. Just angry. Use that anger. Channel it into action. Let me do the legal fighting, you focus on rebuilding your business and your life. Success is the best revenge. Natalie drove back to Rochelle's apartment, her mind spinning. The court hearing had gone well, but seeing Brandon, hearing his voice, being reminded of all his lies, it exhausted her. Inside, Rochelle had dinner waiting. How'd it go? We won the hearing. Brandon's having a meltdown. And criminal charges are moving forward. That's good news, right? It's great news. So why do I feel so drained? Rochelle pulled her into a hug. Because you're grieving. Not just the marriage but the person you thought he was. That version of Brandon you loved? He never existed. You're mourning a ghost. The words hit Natalie like a wave. Rochelle was right. She wasn't just angry at Brandon. She was grieving the 5 years she'd invested in a fantasy. The future she'd imagined that was never going to happen. The person she'd loved who turned out to be a complete fabrication. How do I move past this? Natalie whispered. One day at a time. You fight the legal battle. You rebuild your business. You take care of yourself. And eventually you'll wake up one day and realize you've built something better than what you lost. That night, Natalie couldn't sleep. She opened her laptop and dove into her consulting business accounts. 3 contracts were expiring soon. She needed to secure renewals and find new clients. Time to stop letting Brandon define her life and start building her own future. She spent hours crafting proposals, reaching out to contacts, refreshing her website. The work felt good, productive, forward-moving, completely under her control. Her phone pinged around midnight. An email from Rachel Simmons, one of the women Brandon had scammed. Dear Natalie, Detective Porter gave me your email. I wanted to thank you for coming forward and exposing Brandon. I testified to the grand jury yesterday. It was terrifying but also empowering. For months I felt so stupid for falling for his lies. Knowing I'm not alone, that he fooled so many smart women, helps. I hope you're doing okay. We should all grab coffee sometime, all of us Brandon survivors. What do you think? Rachel. Natalie read the email twice. Brandon survivors. She liked that. Not victims. Survivors. She typed back. Rachel, thank you for being brave enough to testify. Coffee sounds wonderful. Let me coordinate with the others and find a time that works. We're all in this together. Natalie. Maybe something good could come from this disaster. A community of women who'd been hurt by the same predator, supporting each other through recovery. Not friends, necessarily, but allies united by shared experience. Over the next week, Natalie coordinated with Mitchell, Diane, and Detective Porter. More evidence emerged daily. Brandon had scammed at least 12 women now, with a total of over $600,000 in fraud. The DA was confident about getting indictments on multiple counts. Simone checked in regularly, sharing information about Brandon's movements and contacts. She'd moved in with her sister permanently and was preparing for the baby's arrival. Natalie found herself oddly invested in Simone's well-being, though they weren't quite friends. Maybe Rochelle was right. Maybe the path forward was about building new connections, new support systems, new versions of success that had nothing to do with Brandon or the life she'd thought she wanted. The grand jury hearing came and went. Indictments were handed down. 12 counts of fraud, 7 counts of identity theft, 2 counts of forgery, and 1 count of bigamy. Brandon was arrested at his lawyer's office. The media got wind of the story. Local business consultant accused of running relationship con. Natalie's phone exploded with interview requests. She declined them all. This wasn't about fame or revenge. It was about justice. And she was going to make sure Brandon got exactly what he deserved. The news coverage was brutal and satisfying in equal measure. Local stations ran the story for a week straight. Romance con artist faces multiple fraud charges. Brandon's carefully crafted image, successful businessman, charming entrepreneur, shattered under the weight of evidence. Natalie watched one broadcast from Rochelle's couch, a strange disconnect between the televised story and her lived experience. Investigators say Harris may have defrauded as many as 15 women over 7 years, stealing an estimated $700,000 through fake investment schemes and identity theft, the reporter said. His alleged victims include his legal wife, a woman he married illegally while already married, and numerous others who say Harris targeted them at gyms, networking events, and social clubs. $700,000. The number had grown as more victims came forward. They found 3 more women, Natalie told Rochelle. Mitchell called this morning. 1 in Phoenix, 2 in Seattle. He traveled for business meetings apparently, which was code for finding new marks. How are you feeling about all this? Rochelle asked carefully. Honestly? Numb. It's been 3 weeks since I walked out of that house. 3 weeks of lawyers and police statements and discovering my entire marriage was a lie. I should be devastated, but mostly I just feel empty. That's normal. You're in shock. Eventually the anger will come, then grief, then hopefully peace. But there's no timeline. Just let yourself feel whatever you feel. Natalie's phone buzzed. An email from her largest consulting client. Natalie, we saw the news coverage. We wanted to reach out and express our support. Your professionalism and expertise have been invaluable to our company. Please let us know if you need anything during this difficult time. We're extending your contract for another year. Reginald Thompson, CO. Relief flooded through her. She'd been terrified that clients would abandon her, worried that Brandon's crimes would somehow tarnish her professional reputation. Instead, they were supporting her. 3 more emails followed with similar messages. Far from destroying her business, the situation had revealed which clients valued her work enough to stand by her. Good news? Rochelle asked, reading Natalie's expression. My clients are sticking with me. One just extended my contract for another year. Of course they are. You're brilliant at what you do. Brandon's crimes have nothing to do with your professional skills. Mitchell Chin called that afternoon with an update. We've traced 2 offshore accounts to the Cayman Islands. $160,000 in one, $85,000 in the other. Both established 3 years ago. Brandon's been planning his exit strategy for a while. Can we freeze those accounts? Already done. The DA's office worked with international law enforcement. Every dollar Brandon stole is being locked down. When this is over, you'll get your share back. What about the other victims? There's enough money to make most of them whole, especially once we liquidate the condo and his other assets. The women who lost the most, Patricia, Simone, Rachel, they'll be prioritized in restitution. Natalie thought about Simone, 8 months pregnant now with no savings and no father for her baby. At least she'd get something back from the wreckage Brandon had created. Trial date is set, Mitchell continued. 4 months from now. DA wants you to testify. You okay with that? Absolutely. I want to look Brandon in the eye while I tell the truth about what he did. After Mitchell hung up, Natalie opened her laptop. Time to stop reacting to Brandon's chaos and start building something new. Her consulting business was stable, but she'd always dreamed of expanding. Maybe hiring other consultants, building a small firm instead of working solo. Why not now? Why wait for the perfect time when she could create it herself? She spent the afternoon drafting a business plan. Foster Consulting Group, specializing in helping mid-size companies optimize operations and scale efficiently. She'd hire consultants with complementary skills, create a brand that was about quality and integrity, build something Brandon could never touch or ruin. The work felt good, purposeful, forward-moving. Her phone rang. Simone. Hey, Natalie answered. Everything okay? I went into labor 2 hours ago, Simone said, her voice tight with pain. My sister's driving me to the hospital. I wanted someone to know. Someone who understands. Do you want me to come? Natalie asked before she could think better of it. You do that. We're in this together, remember? Alliance of Brandon survivors. Besides, every baby should have someone cheering for them when they enter the world. 3 hours later, Natalie sat in a hospital waiting room with Simone's sister Maria, sipping terrible coffee and making awkward small talk about everything except the situation that brought them together. Thank you for being here, Maria said eventually. Simone's been alone through most of this pregnancy. Our parents passed away years ago and she doesn't have many friends left. Brandon isolated her pretty effectively. He did that to me too, Natalie admitted. Subtle things, questioning my friendships, creating drama so I distanced myself from people, making me think he was the only one who really understood me. Classic abuser tactics. You and Simone, you're okay with each other? I know the situation is complicated. It is complicated. But she's not the enemy. Brandon is. And right now Simone needs support. So here I am. At 3:47 a.m., a nurse came out smiling. It's a girl. 7 pounds 2 ounces. Mom and baby are doing great. Relief and something else, an unexpected happiness, washed over Natalie. A baby girl. A new life starting despite all Brandon's destruction. Can we see them? Maria asked. Just one at a time for now. Family only. Maria stood, then paused. Natalie, why don't you go first? You came all this way. The hospital room was quiet except for soft beeping monitors. Simone looked exhausted but peaceful, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in pink blankets. She's here, Simone said softly. She's really here. She's beautiful, Natalie said, meaning it. The baby had Simone's nose, delicate features, a full head of dark hair. I was so scared through this whole pregnancy, Simone admitted. Scared I'd mess up. Scared I'd be a terrible mother. Scared that Brandon's genes would make her turn out like him. Genetics isn't destiny, Natalie said. You're going to raise her with love and truth and integrity. That's what matters. I named her Hope. Hope Marie. Because that's what she is. Hope that something good can come from all this mess. Natalie felt tears sting her eyes. That's a perfect name. Simone looked up at her. I know we'll never be close friends. I know what happened between us is too complicated for that. But I'm glad you're here. Glad Hope has another strong woman in her corner who knows what her father really is and can help me make sure she never becomes like him. She won't, Natalie promised. She's going to be amazing. Leaving the hospital as dawn broke over the city, Natalie felt something shift inside her. The past 3 weeks had been about survival, about fighting, about exposing Brandon's lies. But watching Simone with her daughter reminded her that life continued. New beginnings happened. Hope existed even in the darkest situations. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You think you've won but you haven't. I still have cards to play. Be prepared. Brandon, still threatening despite being out on bail with an ankle monitor. Natalie forwarded the message to Detective Porter and deleted it. She wasn't afraid anymore. Brandon could rage all he wanted. He had no power over her now. 2 days later, Brandon's mother called. Natalie almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Natalie, this is Helen Harris. I need to talk to you about Brandon." "Mrs. Harris, I don't think." "Please. Just 5 minutes. I owe you an apology." They met at a park near Natalie's old neighborhood. Helen looked older than Natalie remembered, grayer, more fragile. She sat on a bench overlooking a playground, her hands twisted together in her lap. "I didn't know," Helen said immediately. "About the other women, the fraud, any of it. I swear I didn't know." "But you knew something was wrong," Natalie said. "You must have." Helen nodded slowly. "He's my son. I wanted to believe the best. He'd tell me stories about business deals falling through, about you being difficult, about bad luck. I believed him because believing anything else meant admitting I'd raised a monster. He used your name on one of his bank accounts." "I know. The police showed me the documents. My signature was forged. I never authorized it. I filed a complaint against my own son." Helen's voice broke. "What kind of mother does that?" "The kind who knows right from wrong," Natalie said gently. "You're not responsible for who Brandon chose to become. I keep thinking about all the times I should have seen it. The lies he told as a child. The way he manipulated situations. His father and I, we made excuses. Said he was creative, ambitious, a dreamer. We enabled him. Maybe. But he made his own choices as an adult. He chose to hurt people. That's on him, not you." Helen pulled an envelope from her purse. "This is for you. Money I've saved over the years. $20,000. It won't replace what he stole, but it's something. Mrs. Harris, I can't. Please. I need to do something to make this right. I need to help one of the women my son destroyed." Helen pressed the envelope into Natalie's hands. "Use it to rebuild. Or donate it to a women's shelter. Or burn it if that would make you feel better. But please take it." Natalie looked at the envelope, then at Helen's desperate, grief-stricken face. "What if I split it between all the victims? Help everyone a little bit?" Helen nodded, tears streaming down her face. "That would be perfect. That would be exactly right." They sat in silence for a while, two women connected by their shared experience of loving Brandon and being betrayed by him. "Will you testify against him?" Helen asked eventually. "Yes. Will you?" "I don't know if they'll need me. But if they ask, I will. He needs to face consequences. Real ones. Maybe that's the only way he'll ever change." "He won't change," Natalie said. "People like Brandon don't. They just get better at hiding what they are." "I know. But I have to hope anyway. I'm his mother. Hope is all I have left." After Helen left, Natalie sat alone on the bench, holding the envelope. Helen's money wouldn't fix everything, couldn't erase the pain or restore the lost years. But it was something. A small gesture of accountability from a woman who'd unknowingly enabled a predator. Natalie called Diane Preston. "I have $20,000 from Brandon's mother to split among the victims. Can you coordinate distribution?" "Helen gave you money?" Diane sounded surprised. "She's trying to make amends for what her son did. I think we should accept it in that spirit. I'll set up a victim compensation fund. Each woman gets an equal share." Diane paused. "You're handling all this remarkably well, you know. Most people would be a wreck." "I am a wreck," Natalie admitted. "I'm just really good at compartmentalizing. The breakdown will come later. Right now, I'm focused on winning." "Good. Because we're going to win. I've seen the DA's evidence. Brandon's going to prison. It's just a matter of how long." That night, Natalie allowed herself to think about the future. Not the future she'd imagined with Brandon. Suburban house, kids, growing old together. That fantasy was dead. But a new future. One she built herself on her own terms. A successful business. Real friendships based on honesty. Maybe someday, if she could trust again, a relationship with someone who saw her as an equal partner instead of a meal ticket. It wouldn't be easy. Healing never was. But for the first time since walking into her house to find Simone on the stairs, Natalie felt something other than anger or grief. She felt hope. 6 months after that terrible day at her front door, Natalie stood in her new office, the first space she'd ever rented that was entirely hers. Foster Consulting Group occupied a bright suite in a renovated downtown building. Modern furniture, inspirational artwork, and 3 empty desks waiting for the consultants she was hiring. "This is perfect," Rochelle said, doing a slow spin to take in the space. You did it? You actually built something from the ground up. I always could have, Natalie said. I just thought I was supposed to build it with Brandon. Turns out I'm better at building alone. Her business had exploded over the past few months. Word spread about her skills, and suddenly companies that had never heard of her before were requesting proposals. 5 long-term contracts, 8 short-term projects, and inquiries from potential clients every week. She'd hired 2 other consultants, both women who'd experienced financial abuse and were rebuilding their careers. They understood the importance of independence and creating value on their own terms. Have you thought about what you'll do with the divorce settlement? Rochelle asked. Invest in the business. Buy a house. Something smaller than that suburban facade Brandon and I had, but mine. And I'm thinking about starting a foundation to help women recovering from financial fraud. That's amazing. It's necessary. When all this happened to me, I had savings, skills, and resources. Most women don't. They're left with nothing after con artists like Brandon destroy their lives. If I can help even a few women rebuild, it'll be worth it. Natalie's phone pinged. An email from Diane. Final divorce hearing scheduled for next month. Brandon's criminal trial starts 2 weeks after that. Are you prepared? Prepared. Was anyone ever prepared to sit in court and recount how they'd been betrayed by someone they loved? But she'd do it. For herself. For Simone, Patricia, Rachel, and all the other women. For future potential victims who'd never meet Brandon because he was locked up where he couldn't hurt anyone else. That evening, Natalie attended a networking event for local business owners. She normally hated these things, the forced conversations, the business card exchanges, the superficial connections. But her therapist said she needed to keep building new relationships, healthy relationships, with people who had no connection to her past trauma. She was chatting with a small group about tax strategies when someone joined the circle, a tall man with warm eyes and an easy smile. Sorry I'm late, he said. Client meeting ran long. I'm Cameron Willis, architect. Just moved to town from Boston. He shook hands around the circle, and when he got to Natalie, something sparked. Not fireworks or love at first sight. Just recognition. Like seeing someone and instinctively knowing they were safe, trustworthy, real. Natalie Foster, she said. She'd gone back to her maiden name after filing for divorce. Business consultant. Foster, Cameron repeated. Any relation to Foster Consulting? I saw your website when I was researching local businesses. Impressive client list. That's me. I just opened a physical office downtown. Congratulations. Starting a business takes courage. They drifted into conversation while the rest of the group dispersed. Cameron was refreshingly straightforward. He talked about his work designing sustainable buildings, his recent move to pursue better opportunities, his hobby of restoring old furniture. He didn't ask invasive questions about her personal life or try to impress her with exaggerated accomplishments. I should let you mingle, Cameron said eventually. But I'd love to continue this conversation sometime. Are you free for coffee this week? Natalie hesitated. 6 months post-Brandon, she wasn't sure she was ready to date anyone. But this didn't feel like a date. It felt like 2 professionals connecting, maybe building a friendship. Coffee sounds nice, she said, surprising herself. Professional coffee. Just to be clear. Cameron smiled. Crystal clear. I just moved here and don't know anyone outside work. Making friends as an adult is hard. They exchanged numbers and made plans for Thursday afternoon at a cafe near both their offices. Later, Natalie told Rochelle about the encounter. Is he cute? Rochelle asked immediately. I don't know. I wasn't thinking about that. He just seemed normal. Real. No warning bells. Your warning bells are excellent now. Brandon broke your trust, but he also taught you to recognize red flags. If Cameron feels safe, he probably is. Thursday arrived and Natalie found herself nervous in a way she hadn't been in years. Not because she cared about impressing Cameron, but because this was her first new friendship with someone who didn't know about Brandon. A chance to be just Natalie, business owner, consultant, woman rebuilding her life, instead of Natalie the victim. Cameron was already at the cafe when she arrived, sketching something in a notebook. Habit, he explained, seeing her look at the drawings. I think better with a pencil in my hand. They spent an hour talking about their work, the city, safe neutral topics. Then Cameron said something that changed the dynamic. I looked you up online. I hope that's not creepy. I always research people I'm meeting professionally. Natalie's stomach dropped. Of course he'd seen the news stories about Brandon. Everyone had. And, she asked carefully, and I'm sorry you went through that. My sister was in an abusive relationship years ago. financial and emotional abuse. She got out, but it took years to rebuild. So I understand a little what you've been through. That's why you agreed to coffee? Pity? No, Cameron said firmly. I agreed because you're brilliant at what you do and I thought we could build a professional friendship. The other stuff is just context. It doesn't define who you are. Natalie felt something loosen in her chest. Thank you for saying that. I also want to be clear about something, Cameron continued. I'm not looking for a relationship right now. I got divorced 2 years ago. Amicable, no drama, we just wanted different things. But I'm still figuring out who I am as a single person. I'm not trying to date you. I'm just trying to meet good people. That's exactly what I need to hear, Natalie said honestly. I'm not ready for anything romantic either. But I could use more friends who aren't involved in the legal mess my life has become. They talked for another hour about books, favorite restaurants in the city, weekend hobbies. Cameron was easy to talk to. He listened more than he talked, asked thoughtful questions, didn't try to fix her problems or offer unsolicited advice. When they parted ways, Natalie felt lighter. One normal conversation with a normal person about normal things. No lawyers, no court dates, no discussions of fraud and betrayal. Just coffee and conversation. Maybe she could build a new life after all. Over the next few weeks, Natalie and Cameron developed an easy friendship. They'd meet for lunch between client meetings, compare notes on difficult projects, recommend books and podcasts to each other. Cameron introduced her to his friend group, other architects and designers, and Natalie brought him to a few business networking events. There was no romantic tension, no hidden agenda. Just genuine friendship. He's good for you, Rochelle observed after Natalie returned from a Saturday afternoon furniture shopping trip with Cameron. You're smiling more. Laughing more. We're just friends, Natalie protested. I know. That's what makes it so healthy. You're learning to trust again without the pressure of romance. Building your confidence through platonic relationships before you even think about dating. Natalie's therapist agreed. Friendship is the foundation of any good relationship. The fact that you and Cameron have that without romantic expectations is actually ideal for where you are in your healing. The criminal trial started on a cold November morning. Natalie sat in the courtroom with Simone, Patricia, Rachel, and 5 other women Brandon had defrauded. A united front of survivors. Brandon looked smaller than Natalie remembered, diminished somehow in his orange jumpsuit. He'd lost weight in jail, his face hollow and drawn. When his eyes met hers across the courtroom, she saw no remorse. Just anger that he'd been caught. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Natalie testified on day 3, recounting their marriage, the discovery of Simone, the stolen money, the threatening texts. She was calm, factual, unemotional. Just presenting the truth. Brandon's defense tried to paint her as a vengeful ex-wife exaggerating innocent mistakes. But there were too many victims, too much evidence, too clear a pattern of behavior. On the final day, the jury deliberated for 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. Fraud, identity theft, forgery, bigamy. Brandon would be sentenced in 6 weeks. Outside the courthouse, the 12 women gathered in a cluster, hugging and crying and supporting each other. They'd won. The predator who'd hurt them all was going to prison. We should stay in touch, Patricia suggested. Not to dwell on Brandon but to support each other. We're all rebuilding. We could help each other. They exchanged contact information and made plans for a monthly meetup. Not a victim support group. None of them wanted to identify primarily as victims. But a network of strong women who understood each other's journeys. Natalie drove back to her office thinking about the future. The divorce would be finalized soon. Brandon would be sentenced. She'd get her share of the recovered assets. Not everything he'd stolen but enough to feel some justice. And then she'd keep building. Her business. Her friendships. Her new life. A text from Cameron. Saw the news about the verdict. Are you okay? Want company tonight or space? Natalie smiled. That was Cameron, respectful, thoughtful, giving her choice instead of assuming what she needed. She typed back, company would be nice. Bring Thai food? On it. See you at 7. That evening, surrounded by good food and an even better friend, Natalie felt something she hadn't felt in months. Maybe years if she was honest. Not happiness, not yet. The wounds were too fresh, the grief too raw. But peace. The quiet knowledge that she was going to be okay. That she was building something real and good and entirely hers. Brandon had taken a lot from her. But he hadn't taken everything. And what remained was strong enough to build a beautiful future on. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in late January. Natalie woke early, dressed in a sharp blue suit that made her feel powerful, and drove downtown through morning traffic that seemed unusually light. The courtroom was packed. All 12 victims attended, along with their attorneys, families, and supporters. Media filled the back rows, cameras ready. Brandon's mother sat alone in a corner, her face drawn with grief. Brandon was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed. He looked even worse than at the trial, gaunt, pale, defeated. His expensive attorney sat beside him, jaw tight, knowing this was a lost cause. Judge Harrison, the same stern woman who'd presided over the preliminary divorce hearing, reviewed the case files. Mr. Harris, you've been convicted of 12 counts of fraud, 7 counts of identity theft, 2 counts of forgery, and 1 count of bigamy. These crimes spanned 7 years and victimized at least 12 women, possibly more. Before I impose sentence, I'm going to hear victim impact statements. One by one, the women stood and spoke. Patricia talked about losing her retirement savings and her ability to trust men. Rachel described the depression and anxiety that followed realizing she'd been conned. Simone spoke about raising her daughter alone, explaining someday why her father was in prison. When Natalie's turn came, she stood and faced Brandon directly. "You stole 5 years of my life," she said, her voice steady. 5 years I spent supporting your dreams, while you systematically robbed me blind. You made me doubt my own judgment, question my own worth, and feel grateful for crumbs of affection while you lavished attention on other women. But here's what you need to know. I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a survivor. I've rebuilt my life bigger and better than anything we had together. I've started a successful business. I've built genuine friendships based on honesty and respect. I've learned that I'm stronger alone than I ever was with you. You tried to destroy me. Instead, you freed me. So thank you in a twisted way. Thank you for showing me exactly who you are so I could become exactly who I needed to be." Brandon looked away, unable to meet her eyes. After all 12 women spoke, Judge Harrison addressed the court. "I've been a judge for 23 years. I've seen many types of criminals. But fraud cases like this, serial predators who systematically target vulnerable people, particularly women, these are among the most disturbing. Mr. Harris didn't just steal money. He stole trust, security, years of his victims' lives. He showed no remorse even when caught. He threatened and harassed these women for having the courage to expose his crimes." She paused, looking directly at Brandon. "Mr. Harris, you are a danger to society. You've demonstrated a pattern of predatory behavior spanning nearly a decade. You've shown no capacity for reform or accountability. Therefore, I'm sentencing you to the maximum term allowed by law, 15 years in state prison with no possibility of parole for the first 7 years. Additionally, you're ordered to pay full restitution to all victims, $743,000 plus court costs and interest. You will also register as a fraud offender upon release, requiring disclosure to potential employers and romantic partners for the rest of your life." 15 years. Brandon would be in his 50s when he got out. A collective exhale went through the victims section. Justice. Real, tangible justice. Brandon's attorney tried to object, but the judge shut him down. "Your client had every opportunity to accept responsibility and cooperate. He chose to fight, to lie, to continue victimizing these women through the legal process. These are the consequences of those choices." As Brandon was let out, he turned and looked at Natalie one last time. She saw no apology in his eyes. Just resentment that she'd won. She smiled at him. A small, genuine smile. Because she had won. They all had. Outside the courthouse, the 12 women gathered in a cluster, sharing tears and hugs and relief. "It's finally over," Patricia said. "We can move on now." "Not over," Rachel corrected. "Just beginning. The real work is rebuilding. But at least we can do it knowing he can't hurt anyone else for a long time." Simone approached Natalie, little hope bundled in a carrier against her chest. "I want you to be her godmother," Simone said. "Not because of obligation or guilt, but because you're the strongest person I know. I want Hope to grow up with you as an example of resilience." Natalie looked at the baby, now 4 months old, with bright eyes and Simone's smile. "I'd be honored." They weren't friends exactly. The situation was still too complicated for that. But they were family in a strange, untraditional way. Connected by shared trauma and mutual survival. The divorce hearing the following week was anticlimactic after the drama of the criminal trial. Natalie got half the recovered assets, $370,000. The house was sold and proceeds split. She got sole control of her business. Brandon got nothing except debt and prison. Walking out of family court for the last time, officially divorced and free, Natalie felt a chapter of her life slam shut. The Brandon years were over. Whatever came next was entirely hers to create. Cameron met her for lunch to celebrate. They went to a nice restaurant overlooking the river, ordering expensive wine and appetizers. "How does it feel?" he asked. "To be officially done?" "Surreal. Like waking up from a very long, very vivid nightmare." Natalie sipped her wine. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For another lie to be revealed. But there's nothing left. It's just over." "What's next for you?" "I'm buying a house. Small, manageable, completely mine. And I'm expanding the business, hiring 2 more consultants, taking on bigger clients. I'm also setting up that foundation I mentioned to help women recovering from financial fraud." "The Foster Foundation?" Cameron suggested. "Maybe. I'm still working on the name." Natalie paused. "What about you? Still happy you moved here?" "Very. I've got 3 major projects lined up, I've made good friends, and the city feels like home." He hesitated. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Sure. When do you think you'll be ready to date again?" Natalie's heart skipped. "I don't know. Maybe never. Maybe soon." "Why?" "Because when you are ready, I'd like to be considered." She stared at him, surprised. "I thought we were just friends." "We are. And that's what makes this different. I've spent 6 months getting to know you as a person, not as a romantic prospect. I've seen you at your worst and your best. I've watched you rebuild your entire life from scratch. And somewhere along the way I realized I'm falling for you. Not the idea of you. Just you, Cameron." "But," he interrupted gently, "I'm not asking for anything now. You need time. I get that. I just wanted you to know that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'm interested. And if you're never ready, that's okay too. Our friendship matters more than the possibility of romance." Natalie didn't know what to say. In the past 6 months, she'd learned to trust Cameron in a way she hadn't trusted anyone in years. He'd never pushed, never demanded, never tried to fix her. He'd just been present. Steady. Real. "I care about you too," she finally said. "But I'm terrified. Brandon destroyed my ability to trust romantic partners. Even knowing you're nothing like him, even recognizing all the ways you're different, the fear is still there." "I understand. And I'm not going anywhere. Whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here. As a friend if nothing else." They finished lunch and parted ways with a long hug that felt different from all their previous hugs. Warmer. Fuller of possibility. That night, Natalie lay awake thinking about Cameron's confession. She wasn't ready for a relationship. But maybe someday. When she'd finished healing. When she could trust again without flinching. Maybe someday. The following months passed in a blur of positive activity. Natalie's business exploded. 5 more long-term contracts, inquiries from Fortune 500 companies, recognition in industry publications. She hired 3 more consultants and moved to a larger office space. She bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a tiny yard perfect for morning coffee. Not the suburban palace she'd imagined with Brandon. Better. Hers. The Foster Foundation launched with funding from her divorce settlement and donations from local businesses. They provided grants to women recovering from financial fraud, offering support for job training, therapy, legal fees, and basic living expenses during the rebuilding process. Simone was one of the first grant recipients. With the foundation's help, she went back to school for nursing, secured childcare for Hope, and started building a stable future. "You changed my life," Simone told Natalie at the foundation's opening event. "I don't know where I'd be without your support." "You changed your own life," Natalie corrected. "I just helped clear some obstacles." Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Work, friends, monthly meetups with the other survivors, family dinners with Rochelle and her family. Natalie dated casually, nothing serious, just testing the waters of trust again. Cameron remained a constant presence, a friend who might someday be more. A year after Brandon's sentencing, Natalie received a letter from him. She almost threw it away without reading, but curiosity won. "Natalie, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I wouldn't blame you if you burned this letter. But I need to say some things even if you never respond. I'm not going to claim I'm a changed man. Prison hasn't magically fixed whatever's broken inside me. But it has given me time to think about what I did. To all of you. The women I hurt. The lives I destroyed. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I see now what I couldn't see before. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I destroyed it through pure selfishness and stupidity. You're going to have a great life. You already are, based on what I hear from my mother. You're going to be successful and happy and surrounded by people who appreciate you. That's what you deserve. I'm sorry. For everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but it's true. Brandon. Natalie read the letter twice, looking for manipulation, for hidden agenda, for the con. But she couldn't find it. Maybe Brandon was finally being honest for once in his life. She showed the letter to her therapist. What do you want to do with it? Her therapist asked. Nothing. I don't need to respond. I don't need his apology or his acknowledgement. I've moved on. Natalie folded the letter and tucked it away. But I'm glad he wrote it. Not for him. For me. Because it proves I've healed enough that his words don't have power over me anymore. That was the truth. Brandon's apology changed nothing because she didn't need it to feel complete. She'd built a life so full and rich and meaningful that he was just a footnote in her history now. The happy ending she'd always imagined looked nothing like she expected. No perfect husband, no suburban house, no traditional family. Instead, she had her own business empire, a network of incredible women supporting each other, a foundation changing lives, and genuine friendships built on honesty and respect. And maybe, someday soon, a relationship with someone who saw her as an equal partner. Someone who appreciated her strength rather than trying to exploit it. Someone like Cameron. But even if that never happened, Natalie was happy. Genuinely happy. Because she'd learned the most important lesson. She didn't need anyone to complete her. She was whole on her own. And that was the best revenge of all. The grand opening of Foster Foundation's second location fell on a perfect spring afternoon. Natalie stood on the steps of the new building, a renovated community center that would house support services for women rebuilding after financial fraud, watching people arrive for the ceremony. 2 years. It had been 2 years since that terrible day when she found Simone at her door and her entire life imploded. Looking back now felt like watching a movie about someone else's life. That frightened, betrayed woman seemed impossibly far away from who Natalie was now. This is incredible, Rochelle said, hugging Natalie tight. Look at what you built. Natalie looked. The foundation had helped 37 women so far, providing grants averaging $15,000 each. Some used it for education, some for legal fees, some for therapy and childcare while they rebuilt their careers. Every woman had a success story. Patricia had become a financial literacy educator, teaching other women to recognize and avoid fraud. Rachel started her own tech consulting company. Simone graduated nursing school and worked at the local hospital while raising Hope, now a bright-eyed 2-year-old with her mother's smile. You should say a few words, Rochelle said, before the official ceremony starts. Natalie took the microphone, looking out at the crowd. 50 people, maybe more. Survivors, supporters, donors, community members. All here because they believed in second chances and rebuilding after devastation. 2 years ago, Natalie began, I thought my life was over. I'd been betrayed by someone I trusted completely. I'd lost money, time, dignity. I thought I'd never recover from the embarrassment and pain. But something remarkable happened. I met other women who'd been through similar experiences. And together we realized we weren't victims. We were survivors. Warriors. Women who refused to be defined by what happened to us. She spotted Simone in the crowd, Hope on her hip, both smiling. This foundation exists because we believed we could turn pain into purpose. We could help other women avoid the isolation and hopelessness we felt. We could create something beautiful from something devastating. Natalie paused, gathering her thoughts. So thank you. Thank you to every woman who shared her story. Thank you to every donor who believed in our mission. Thank you to everyone who said me too and chose to fight back. You're all part of this miracle. Applause rippled through the crowd. Natalie stepped down, feeling lighter than she had in years. Cameron appeared at her side, offering a bottle of water. Great speech. Thanks. You came. She smiled at him, feeling warmth spread through her chest. Of course I came. This is important to you, so it's important to me. Over the past year, Natalie and Cameron had slowly, carefully, moved from friendship into something more. Real dates. Honest conversations about fears and boundaries. Introducing each other to families. Taking things at a pace that felt safe and comfortable for both of them. Cameron had been patient as Natalie navigated her fear of intimacy and trust. He never pushed, never demanded, never made her feel broken or damaged. He just loved her, steady, consistent, real love that asked nothing except honesty in return. How does it feel? Cameron asked. Standing here looking at everything you've built? Surreal. Good. Right. Natalie watched Simone approach with hope. Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Miss Natalie. Hope squealed, reaching out with chubby arms. Natalie took the toddler, spinning her around until she giggled. Hey, sweetheart. Are you being good for mommy? Always, Simone said dryly. If by good, you mean refusing to nap and eating nothing but goldfish crackers. They laughed, the easy laughter of women who'd been through hell together and survived. They weren't close friends, the situation was still too complicated for that. But they were family in the way that mattered. Connected by experience and mutual respect. I got into the nursing master's program, Simone said. Full scholarship. I wanted you to hear it first. Simone, that's amazing. Natalie hugged her, still holding hope. You worked so hard for that. I couldn't have done it without the foundation's support. The grant covered my childcare and books while I was in school. It made everything possible. Later, during the official ceremony, Natalie stood on stage with the other foundation board members, Patricia, Rachel, and 2 attorneys who'd helped with the legal framework. They cut a ribbon, made speeches, posed for photos. The local news covered the event. Foster Foundation opens second location. The headline would read, Helping Women Rebuild After Financial Fraud. Natalie didn't seek attention or praise. But she was proud. This was real work, helping real people, making actual change in the world. Mattered. That evening, Cameron took her to dinner at her favorite restaurant, a small Italian place with incredible pasta and dim lighting. I have something to show you, he said after their entrees arrived. He pulled out his tablet, opening architectural renderings. I'm bidding on a project to design a community center downtown. Pro bono work. And I was thinking, what if it included office space for the Foster Foundation? You could move headquarters there, expand services, house everything under one roof. Natalie studied the designs, beautiful, modern, accessible. Space for offices, counseling rooms, classrooms, even a childcare center. Cameron, this is incredible. But we can't afford. The development company is willing to donate the space. I talked to them about your mission and they want to help. So you'd only pay utilities and maintenance. Why would you do this? Cameron reached across the table, taking her hand. Because I love you. Because I believe in what you're doing. Because watching you build this empire from nothing has been the privilege of my life. And because I want to be part of it if you'll have me. Natalie's throat tightened with emotion. I love you too. I think I have for a while, but I was too scared to say it. Are you still scared? Terrified, she admitted. But the good kind of scared. The kind that means I'm taking a risk on something that matters. Cameron smiled, that warm, genuine smile that made her feel safe. Then take the risk with me. Let's build something amazing together. Together, Natalie agreed. Equal partners. Equal partners, Cameron confirmed. They finished dinner talking about the future, both professional and personal. Cameron's architectural firm was growing. Natalie's consulting business had become one of the most respected in the region. The foundation was expanding to 3 locations. They were both building empires separately and together. Move in with me, Cameron said as they walked to his car. Or let me move in with you. Whichever feels right. I'm not trying to rush anything, but we're both paying for apartments when we spend every night together anyway. Natalie had been thinking the same thing. Her little house was perfect, but Cameron's loft had more space for both their needs. Your place, she decided. With the understanding that we both own it. I'm not moving into your space. I'm moving into our space. I'll put your name on the deed tomorrow, Cameron promised. 6 months later they were engaged. Not a dramatic proposal or elaborate scheme. Just a quiet moment on a Sunday morning when Cameron said, I want to marry you, and Natalie said, yes, I want that too. They planned a small ceremony for the following spring. Just family and close friends. None of Brandon's pretentious pageantry or show. Just 2 people who'd both been hurt before, choosing to trust again. Natalie's business hit a major milestone. 20 employees, contracts with 3 Fortune 500 companies, recognition as one of the top consulting firms in the state. She could have sold the company for millions. Instead, she reinvested in growth and established employee profit sharing. Building something sustainable, something that could outlive her. The Foster Foundation expanded to 5 locations across 3 states, helping hundreds of women rebuild after financial fraud. Natalie hired a full-time executive director to manage day-to-day operations, allowing her to focus on strategic growth and fundraising. One afternoon, she received an email from an inmate number she recognized. Brandon. Natalie, I heard about your foundation. About your business. About your engagement. Good for you. I mean that sincerely. I'm up for parole next year. 7 years served. I don't know if I'll get it, but I wanted you to know I'm not going to contact you if I do. You've built a life that has nothing to do with me. I respect that. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be. Brandon. Natalie read the email once, then archived it without responding. Brandon's redemption arc, if it was real, had nothing to do with her anymore. She hoped he'd changed. She hoped he'd never hurt anyone again. But it wasn't her problem to solve. She was too busy living her own beautiful life. The wedding was perfect. Small ceremony at a botanical garden, surrounded by people who genuinely loved and supported them. Simone came with Hope, now a rambunctious 3-year-old who served as flower girl. Patricia, Rachel, and the other survivors attended, along with Cameron's sister and her family. As Natalie stood at the altar looking into Cameron's eyes, she thought about that terrible day 2 years ago when her world collapsed. If someone had told her then that it would lead here, to this love, this success, this purpose, she wouldn't have believed them. But here she was, living proof that endings could be beginnings. That devastation could be transformation. That the worst thing that ever happened to you could somehow lead to the best thing. I love you, Cameron whispered as they exchanged rings. I love you too, Natalie whispered back. Thank you for being patient with me. For seeing me through the worst and still choosing to stay. Always, Cameron promised. That's what partners do. Partners. Equal, honest, authentic partners. Everything her marriage to Brandon never was. The reception was joyful and relaxed. Good food, better company, dancing until her feet hurt. Natalie's employees surprised her with a video montage of client testimonials about how her work had transformed their businesses. Cameron's colleagues gave them a honeymoon trip to Italy. As the evening wound down, Natalie stepped outside for air. The garden was beautiful in twilight, string lights glowing among the flowers. Rochelle found her there, handing her a glass of champagne. You did it, Rochelle said. You survived and thrived. We did it, Natalie corrected. You were there for me when I had nothing. When I couldn't see past the next day. You believed in me before I believed in myself. That's what best friends do. Rochelle clinked her glass against Natalie's. To new beginnings. To new beginnings, Natalie echoed. Later that night, lying in bed next to Cameron in their honeymoon suite, Natalie reflected on the journey that brought her here. The pain, the betrayal, the long hard work of rebuilding. The women she'd met along the way, each one teaching her something about strength and survival. The business she'd built from scratch. The foundation changing lives. This man beside her who saw her at her worst and loved her anyway. None of it had been easy. But all of it had been worth it. What are you thinking about? Cameron asked, pulling her close. How grateful I am. Not for what Brandon did, I'll never be grateful for that. But for everything that came after. For discovering my own strength. For learning who I really am when I'm not trying to be someone's perfect wife. For building a life that's authentically mine. Ours? Cameron corrected gently. Authentically ours. Ours? Natalie agreed, smiling in the darkness. She thought about the pregnant woman on her staircase 2 years ago. About walking away from her old life with nothing but a suitcase and a phone full of evidence. About sitting in coffee shops with other survivors, planning their collective revenge through success rather than destruction. She thought about watching Brandon get sentenced to 15 years. About starting her foundation. About buying her first house alone. About falling in love again despite being terrified. Every step of the journey had been necessary. Every tear, every setback, every moment of doubt had shaped her into someone stronger, wiser, more capable than she'd ever been when she was trying to be Brandon's perfect wife. The betrayal that destroyed her old life had actually saved her. It freed her from a fantasy that was slowly suffocating her real self. It forced her to stand alone and discover she was strong enough to not just survive, but thrive. That was the real revenge. Not hurting Brandon back. Not watching him suffer in prison. Not even reclaiming the money he'd stolen. The real revenge was building a life so beautiful, so meaningful, so full of genuine love and purpose that his shadow couldn't touch it. A life where he was nothing more than a chapter in her history, not the defining story, just a difficult period that taught her who she really was. Natalie Foster Willis, business owner, philanthropist, survivor, wife, friend. A woman who turned devastation into triumph and pain into purpose. That woman had always existed inside her. She just needed the right circumstances to emerge. Thank you, she whispered to the universe, to fate, to whatever force had guided her through the darkness into this light. Cameron's arms tightened around her. For what? For this. For us. For everything. The best is yet to come, Cameron promised. And Natalie believed him. Because this beautiful beginning was just the start of an even more beautiful future. One she was creating on her own terms, with someone who truly saw and valued her. That was worth every tear, every fight, every moment of fear. That was everything.